Welcome back, fight fans. We're back again. Excuse me. After, well, I was going to say a break, but we were here last week with another card. Weird card all around, really. I mean, starting late, road to UFC right in the middle of it. Uh, weird one, but it's going to be good. I'm actually pretty excited for the road to UFC part specifically to see the end of that. It's going to be good. And we will start off with the main card as always. That is going to be opening up, excuse me again, with Yusaku Kinoshita and Adam Fugit. Really, all the ones on this card are very, very close because they're not. Well, over half of the people on this card haven't fought in the UFC yet. Because, there's the road to UFC people, there's people from the Contender Series, there's a couple of new people. So, really, just a bunch of new faces that most people haven't seen before, unless, of course, you've been watching all the, Contender Series and road to UFC. And then, of course, there's a couple actually like Adam Fugit, who he's only fought once, and it was on the prelims of another card last year. So again, another person you probably wouldn't have heard of. But yeah, first one of the night, and they're all going to be really close for the most part. There's only a couple where it's like, okay, we kind of know where this is going to be going. The rest of them very, very close. This is, I would say, a fairly close one. The odds kind of saying otherwise at this point. Excuse me. But seems a lot closer than the odds suggest. Yeah. As I was saying, Fugit did fight for the UFC already one time. That was Michael Morales. I think it said, what's the 7th month? July. So that was in July that he fought against Michael Morales. I wouldn't really say he was winning at any point. Remember Michael Morales being undefeated. I think he was 13-0. I can't remember, but I think that's the number that I saw this morning when I was doing the last minute writing of this. And Morales, really one of those guys that everybody's kind of looking at like, okay, this guy's the real deal here. And Fugit lasted until the 3rd round with him. Looked decent. I mean, he was mostly really his main point that people were kind of looking at him for was that he was still walking Michael Morales down in the 3rd round. It's just wasn't necessarily doing a whole lot of damage. He was definitely taking a lot more than he was dishing out, that's for sure. But the ground game is really the huge part of it that we saw, because he ended up taking Michael Morales down and possibly won that 1st round. Probably not, but possibly. It was a conversation that they were having on the broadcast if Fugit won that round because of his control. He didn't, but it was at least close. And Michael Morales definitely much more impressive than what we've seen, I should say, from Yusaku Kinoshita, who is from the Contender Series making his debut. Wow. Always a problem. Um, yeah, so already, I think they're kind of underestimating him a little bit with this plus 260 betting line. Well, yeah, I just revealed the odds for that one. But Fugit was a way, way bigger underdog against Morales and did way better than people thought. So not really a guy that you can take lightly. That being said, Kinoshita did look very good on the Contender Series. Ended up getting a finish in the third round, which is actually no. Oh no, maybe it was an earlier round. I can't remember. I think it might have been the third round though. And of course, that was the round that Fugit lost his fight as well. So a little bit of parallels there. um, but besides that, I mean, he did look faster. He never really stopped walking forwards in his Contender Series fight. Did really well, did get the finish. Plus, he's 10 years younger than Fugit. So, I think it's closer than the odds are suggesting here. But I do have to go with Kinoshita as well, and I will be heavily favoring the finish. Actually, I wouldn't even say heavily favoring. I will be favoring the finish on this one as well. Wow. Every time, every time. So we will look at the odds right now. And I think also we have to remember that these odds are probably being heavily influenced, and I do mean heavily in this case, heavily influenced by the fact that this is a card completely catered to the Asian fighters of the UFC. You got to remember that part of it too. So, I mean, whenever we see that kind of thing, we see it whenever we go somewhere with, um, I see a comment here. Yo, Connor. I'm not going to put that up, obviously, because of the name, but hello. But yeah, we have to remember that in the odds, when we go to London, we see the London fighters being favored on the odds. When we went to Paris, we saw the French fighters being favored on the odds. It's the same thing this week. We're seeing the Asian fighters get that boost, of course, except for the Road to UFC one where they are all Asian, of course. But yeah, in this case, I think that's kind of what we're seeing. Minus 334 for Kinoshita, Fugit plus 260. I think it should be a little bit closer, but still going with Kinoshita minus 334. Probably won't be putting that in the parlay because Fugit's a bit of a wild card, but I still like it as a pick. The over under is at 2.5 right now. Over being plus 116, under being whoa, wow, my page keeps moving around. Ridiculous. Minus 148 for the under. I almost said, for some reason the website's moving up and down as I'm talking. Really annoying. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah. I'm going with the under on this one because, like I said, Fugit was finished. Kinoshita got the finish. Huge age difference. I'm seeing a finish here. Makes sense. Minus 148. That's the direction I'm going in for this one. Next one, Ho Choi. The return of Ho Choi and the Canadian Kyle Nelson on this one. I would say this is by far the most unpredictable fight on the card because it's tough to predict what's going to happen when you haven't seen one of the fighters in over 3 years. That being Ho Choi hasn't fought since 2019. Before that, lost three in a row. And that the win, I think his last win ended up being like 2016. So we're talking about 7-8 years between his last win and now. That's really tough. I mean, yeah, Ho Choi, very impressive back then. I don't know, you never know how people are gonna come back from that, and of course, he is still 31. We're not talking about somebody who's 31 back then and now coming back when they're 35, 36. We know how that goes. If it was in that case, I'd obviously be going in the other direction for sure, 100% of the time. But as I said, you know, we're trying to favor the Asian fighters on this card. That's what the UFC is doing. So they're trying to give Doo Ho Choi somebody easier on the way back in. I don't know if they did that in this case, though. This is a tough matchup. He's Doo Ho Choi, always 145. And we just saw Nelson in London last year against Jai Herbert fighting at 155 in London against a British guy, an English guy, I should say. And he did really, really well. He was actually doing really well in that fight to the point where I thought, oh man, Herbert might have actually been the wrong choice in this matchup. And I couldn't believe I was thinking that at the time, but it's true. It was really getting close there. Um, that's what makes this so unpredictable because is Doo Ho Choi going to come back like he did in 2016? Like, is he going to look that good? I don't know. We don't know. Nobody knows. And Kyle Nelson, is he going to look that good back down at 145? Is he going to be able to handle somebody who we know is always pressuring, always going for a finish, always going for that in Doo Ho Choi? Can he handle that kind of pressure? I'm not sure. That's why I said it's all up in the air. This matchup is a big question mark all around. That being said, from a betting perspective, I think you kind of have to go with the known quantity in this case, which is Nelson, especially since, like I said, he was fighting up a weight class against a English fighter in London who is very, very impressive. Jai Herbert is very good, and he made it to the decision with him, and it was close. It was a close fight. So for me, because of all that, I gotta go with Nelson. You never know what's going to be coming back. I mean, he hasn't fought in 3 years. He hasn't won in 7 years. I don't know. I don't know about Doo Ho Choi. I don't know. So I've got to go with the known quantity here, Nelson. That's where I'm going with it on this one. But again, this anything could happen in this one. The odds, though, and this is what I was mentioning, heavily favoring Choi. And I don't think you'd be seeing that in any other situation. I actually think if this exact matchup happened on any other night, I don't think the odds would be this one-sided. It's minus 193 for Doo Ho Choi right now. I mean, where is that warranted at all, other than the fact that he is a Korean fighter on a card that, let's be honest, I think we're going to be seeing a lot of specifically Korean winners. I mean, you've got Daeun Jung, you've got the Iron Turtle, who I forget his real name now, but that name, the nickname is so cool that I'm forgetting his actual name. Oh, Jun Young Park, of course. And then of course you've got Jiyeon Kim, who's favored to win. You've got Jun Young Lee, I'm picking him for sure to win his road to UFC matchup. And then you've got, oh yeah, there's the one in I believe it's Park is also, in Hyung Sung Park. So two Parks on this card favored to win. So I mean the Koreans looking incredible on this card. This is the only Korean on the card where but it really could go either way. But I'm just saying that because that is what's happening with these odds, I think. So if you're going in the other direction with Nelson, which is the way I'm going, you're getting a very good deal on Nelson on this one, plus 157 for somebody who is far more active and did really well against Jai Herbert in that last fight. So I'm going with Nelson on this, but I would understand any veteran UFC watchers here going in the other direction, or even people who are banking on these specifically Korean fighters to win all their matches on this card. I totally understand where you're coming from, but the odd, if you really just look at that singular matchup, the odds make absolutely no sense. So you got to go with Nelson on this one, especially if you're looking at the value of the overall bet. I mean, Nelson clearly has, I would say, on this entire card, ooh, except for maybe Derek Lewis, might have the best value on this entire card at plus 157. So I'm going that way for sure. Over under is at 1.5 right now. Um, I mean, I see why, because Do Ho Choi's fights tend to end in the first or second round. But if you look at the other side of it, Nelson is very good at dragging people on. And I think that's way more where it's headed on this one. Nelson, very, very tough. So, I mean, I'm not saying I don't think he's there. I'm not saying Choi has no chance of finishing this fight, but it's going to be pretty hard. Nelson's pretty tough. And on the other side, Choi is also very, very tough. I mean, we've seen him take quite a few shots, even though, yes, he did lose. He did get finished by Charles Jourdain in his last fight. You know, he can very much take a hit. And I rewatched it being his last fight because I wanted to see what Doo Ho Choi was all about because I had never seen him fight before. Um, I thought it was a bit of an early stoppage against Jourdain, and I think a lot of people kind of thought that too. I mean, it was in Korea too. Give him a chance in front of his home crowd. Come on now, give him a chance. Actually, I think it was in Korea. I think it was. I just saw the name of it and assumed, okay, there's a lot of Korean fighters. I'm assuming it's in Korea. I don't actually know if it was or not. It was somewhere in Asia. Um, but yeah. Anyway, I thought that was a bit of an early stoppage. He's a pretty durable guy. Also, Nelson, more so the guy that's going to push you into the fence. So I would actually say the over is the pretty clear way to go on this, especially at 1.5. I think that's a very, very clear direction to go in at minus 140. So that is where I will be going with it. I will be going Nelson plus 157, over 1.5 at minus 140. That's where I'm going with it. Marcin Tybura, Blagoy Ivanov on this one. In spite of what the odds are saying here, I actually think this is one of the easiest ones to predict. I really do. Tybura just came off of beating who we thought was the next title challenger one of the next title challengers at heavyweight, Alexander Romanov. Huge upcoming prospect. Barely got the win over Romanov there. Tybura did. Slightly controversial. I don't agree with the win. I thought he lost, but actually, technically, I thought it was a draw. That's how I would have scored it, was a draw at 28-28. He ended up getting the majority decision win in that one. So the judges being slightly generous there. I think it was more so a tie. But again, whatever, it happens. But that being said, Romanov very, very clearly way, 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 way more impressive than anything Blagoy Ivanov has ever done. I just don't think this is really as close as the odds are suggesting here. Yeah, because Ivanov hasn't really done a whole lot. And he kind of seems to be on his way out. He kind of seems to be one of those guys. He's 36, seems to be on his way out. So, yeah, I'm going with Tybura for sure on this one. And you're getting quite the bargain in terms of the odds on this one. Minus 140 for Tybura, plus 114 for Ivanov. Yeah, I'm going all in on Tybura on this one. Yeah, not really too much to say about that matchup. I just don't really think it's, but I will say though, even though these guys are heavyweights, these are the kind of heavyweights that are always getting decisions. Neither one of them really ends up getting finished or gets finishes. So I don't really see this going any other way than Tybura by decision. I think that's a open and shut kind of choice right there. I think that's the pretty clear way to go. So yeah, if you're looking for some good prop bets, Tybura decision, fantastic, fantastic betting line, I'm sure. The over under is at 2.5 because again, I clearly they've done their research at least a little bit on this one. Minus 220 for over 2.5. Again, heavily favoring the decision. I think that's a pretty clear way to go with it too. Neither one of them really gets any finishes. So minus 220 is a pretty clear way to go. Yeah, there's really not a whole lot to say about that matchup. Tybura decision. There we go. Da-Un Jung, Devin Clark. Again, I think we're kind of seeing that favoritism in the betting line here because, again, I don't really see this as being this clear cut of a decision. I think it's very, very close. Da-Un Jung hasn't really done a whole lot. His record is good. So on paper, he looks very, very good. But I mean, he's got a draw against Sam Alvey in 2020. I mean, nobody's losing to. I mean, Sam Alvey didn't win for like 8 fights in a row, and you got a draw against him. That's kind of brutal. Then he got knocked out by Jacoby in his last fight in the first round. It's it's not a good look. It's really not a good look. And on the other side, I mean, yeah, Devin Clark hasn't really done all that well recently, but he was in the top 15. He fought against Anthony Smith. I mean, he's a lot better than his record suggests. So this really is way more even than the odds are suggesting. That being said, I will be going with the Korean Da-Un Jung on this one, but I gotta say the odds are not anything you'd want to be like, oh, that looks good. That looks like a good deal. No, we're not really seeing that right now at all. It's minus 240 for Jung, plus 190 for Clark. That's not really one that I would be putting a lot of money on. I do think that Jung is the safer choice, but this is not a matchup that I would be throwing a whole lot of money on because this really could go either way. Especially in the light heavyweight division where anything can happen at any moment. I mean, this is, I would say, the least predictable division in the entire UFC. And I mean men or women, light heavyweight is just all over the place. So I would be staying clear of this one for the betting. But if you needed to pick one, Da-Un Jung, I would say is a slightly safer choice. Over under 2.5 rounds. I am going to, it's funny because I am thinking a decision is more likely on this one because Da-Un Jung is in a lot of decisions. Clark, not so much. Usually ends up getting finished. Has been in a couple of decisions. There's a lot more meat on the bone for the over 2.5. That's at plus 130 right now. Over 2.5 plus 130. So there's definitely more value there for sure. But minus 160. Yeah. I would probably be going for the over plus or over 2.5 rounds plus 130. Simply because there's just a lot more value there. And also, like I said, I do think it's going to be a decision for Jung. But a finish could happen at any moment for sure. I mean, like I said, Da-Un Jung knocked out in the first round last time. Clark has been knocked out a few times as well in the first and second rounds. Again, it's light heavyweight. We could literally see anything happen here. But more value, the over 2.5 seems to be in that kind of position. So that's where I'm going with it. Da-Un Jung, over 2.5 plus 130. That's where I'm going with it. Then we've got The main event, this is definitely one that I'm very much looking forward to. This was supposed to happen a few months ago. I can't remember when. Maybe December, maybe November. That's what this was supposed to happen. Derek Lewis, Sergey Spivak. I want to say that I actually. Oh, that's right. I think this actually may have been the card that ended up being Kennedy Zachukwu and whoever was fighting Kennedy Zachukwu. I can't remember who that was. Was it Kutelaba? I can't remember. Um, I think it might have been. I think that was actually the card because it was actually canceled the day of, and I remember being heavily disappointed by that. And that it was one of the only times I've ever seen where it's like, oh, the whole card had to change their name because on the day of because of what happened. I think that's when this was happening. I don't know. I think so. And I'll say the same thing I said then. I still think Lewis is the clear way to go with this. I mean, I do think that Spivak is very good, but this is not a great matchup for him because Lewis, you have to get Spivak has to get in close to the people that he's fighting. He's always done that. He did that with Sakai. He did that with everybody. He's done that with everybody. That's just not really something you can do against Derek Lewis. You can't get close like that because he will knock you out. That's what he does. You get close, you get knocked out. Gon beat him because he stayed far away and, eventually ended up basically tiring him out to the point where he ended up just getting an easy knockout. And of course, we know what happened with what's his name? The Russian guy, Pavlovich. We saw Pavlovich. That was, I mean, really a completely early stoppage. Oh, just overwhelmed him right away with his striking. But and he's so long, Pavlovich, that was a problem. Spivak doesn't really have any of these things. He's not longer. He's not taller. He's not bigger. He's not a stand-up. He's not a striker that's going to be doing that. So really, this is actually the perfect chance for Lewis to finally get another win. So yeah, I really think this is his perfect chance to get a knockout and hopefully get back on track. I don't think he would retire after this, but if he does, I don't, there's not too many better ways you could go out as Derek Lewis than with a knockout over Spivak in this one. I don't know if he's going to do that or not. Like I said, I think he's probably going to keep going because he's showing no signs of wanting to retire. But his luck hasn't been great recently. So I would say if the real way to go with this, get a knockout here over Spivak, call it a career, and then that's it. But that being said, I kind of hope he doesn't and that he keeps winning because we love a good Derek Lewis win. But there's not too many options in these top 15 anymore for him. I mean, it's getting better and better in the heavyweight division. So I don't know, but I do think that he's going to grab the win here. And that's it for the main card. And really, that's pretty much it. I mean, I will talk about the road to UFC because that is essentially what the entire prelim portion is the road to UFC. I already covered all 4 of these matchups right after the finale, right after the semifinals of Road to UFC. That was in November or December, somewhere around there, with the pay-per-view over there. And I think it was after the Dubai card or the same weekend as the Dubai card. Whatever that was, October, November, like I said, not really sure. And I did talk about every single matchup. I haven't changed it. I actually am literally just copy pasting it because nothing's changed. Absolutely nothing has changed. All the fighters have stayed the same. All the matchups have stayed the same. Nothing has changed at all for all 4 of these matchups. But for anybody that did not get the chance to read that or watch that, I will go through it again right here. And of course, in the article for tomorrow, that will be on Area 51, of course. So yeah, we'll go in the weight order because that's what I did back then. But that's actually the order that it will appear on the card as well. They're starting with flyweight, then bantamweight, featherweight, and then we end with the lightweight one. And that, ooh, I don't know. Don't think that is a featured prelim. It might be. I can't remember. But anyway, so that's what we're going to be going through right now. And that opens up with, of course, the flyweights, as I said. That is Sunguk Choi, Hyun Sung Park. Again, two Koreans in this one. So we will see at least one Korean champion. That is for sure. Because, well, unless we get a draw, of course. Oh, actually, no, that's right. There are no draws in Road to UFC. If there is a tie, it goes to a sudden death fourth round. So there actually is no tie. So we will 100% without a doubt see a Korean Road to UFC champion. And yeah, we'll get into who I think is going to be winning that. I do think it's very close. I mean, flyweight is always pretty close anyway. But I will be favoring I is he I think he is undefeated. Yes, he is undefeated. Hyun Sung Park. I will be going with him because in his last matchup, that was against Top Noi Kiram, who is a very, 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 very good kickboxer. And Park dealt with the stand up part, very nicely, never really got hit all too bad. And then he ended up actually giving Kyoram his first submission loss. Because even though he is a kickboxer, he is very, very good at getting back up and not even getting taken down in the first place. So for Park to do that, that was very impressive. And like I said, he is undefeated. He did beat a very elite striker in Kyoram. And Choi, he did have a really good fight against Cho Lun. Very, very good. He does also look very good. Like I said, these are two really good prospects that honestly we could easily see both of them in the UFC at some point. But I've got to go with Park on this one because exactly what I said, which is he's just looked way better and he's undefeated. I don't know if he's going to get the finish. Personally, I'm still going with the decision. I'm not changing my mind on that one because I didn't actually give my full on like finish or decision kind of prediction uh, when the semifinals happened. I will now, of course. I'm going with a decision, but he very easily could end up getting a finish, Park. But they're flyweights. Park. I mean, I'm sure they've trained together. They're both Korean. They both went through this Road to UFC process. I don't know if I know that one of them is on the Korean Zombies team. I don't know if both of them were or not. But I would imagine they would have trained together at some point, being such a small country in a sport that's this closely knit. I'm sure they've met each other at some point. So I'm sure they know everything about each other, which is why that usually tends to mean that you're going to have a very close fight. And again, it is flyweight. So I'm going decision on this one. And I think that's a pretty good way to go with it. The odds on this one are basically mirroring exactly what I just said. Hyun-Sung Park minus 200. So, a decent favorite. And I think that's fair considering what we've seen from him and his record, of course. And the over under is at 2.5 rounds. And it is heavily favoring the over minus 240 for over 2.5. Again, it is flyweight, so I totally understand where that's coming from. I do think that's how it's going to go down, but now that I'm looking at the odds, considering what I said that Park is undefeated, he got a finish over Top Noi Kiram. He could definitely get a finish here. So, in terms of the odds, plus 183 for under 2.5 is something that is very good, and you could definitely put a bit of money on that. But, if you're going to pick the winner, if you want to pick the safest bets, which is what I usually do, where it's like, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be winning this bet. That's how I make my bets. There are different people do different things. I would be going with the over 2.5 on this. Although personally, I'd probably be staying away from the over under altogether on this because there's just not a whole lot of good looking numbers on this one. But Park is looking very good at -200. I do very much like that. Then we got the bantamweights. That would be Rinya Nakamura and Toshiomi Kazama. And that I believe, I think anyway, is 2 Japanese fighters. So we got guaranteed Korean winner, guaranteed Japanese winner for the bantamweight. That's pretty cool. Which means, well, we'll be seeing a new Korean in the UFC and a new Japanese guy in the UFC. How about that? That's great. Great for those markets. We need more. I mean, just this tournament alone, we see so many good Asian fighters. It's crazy to me that we don't see more in the UFC. They really should be bringing more from China, Korea, and Japan, especially because those are really dense in their talent. And then occasionally see somebody, like, well, what we'll see in the lightweights with Jekka Sadagi and Anshul Jubli, being from Indonesia and India there. That's pretty cool, which is why I like this tournament so much. But anyway, 2 Japanese guys, Rinya Nakamura. Would it be Rinya or Rinya? Rinya Nakamura and Toshiomi Kazama. I think there's a pretty clear favorite in this one, I gotta say, even though Kazama did look very good in his fight. I mean, Nakamura, he looked absolutely insane in both of his fights. Also undefeated, just like Park, and he really could be the next big thing at bantamweight, because this guy is unbelievable. Olympic wrestler, but he's an Olympic wrestler, but got a massive knockout in the last fight. And if that doesn't tell you how well-rounded this guy is, especially at bantamweight, by the way, getting a knockout and a submission at bantamweight. I mean, in the first round, I think both of them were in the first round too. I don't know if I wrote that down or not. I did not write that down. Nakamura is just a special guy. And we'll be talking about another special guy in the next matchup too, but this guy's the real deal. And I even said, actually, Nakamura truly looked like a top 20 fighter in the UFC back then, which I wrote this weekend. UFC back in the semifinals. I'll edit that quickly. Sorry, I'm editing this. I know I'm going to forget. I'm not good at remembering things, so I figured I'd edit it now. Anyway, so Nakamura is the very clear favorite in this. And like I said, Kazama actually got a bye in the second in the semifinals there because his opponent dropped out, or was injured, of course. So he didn't end up fighting, which meant we did see Nakamura twice, and he looked absolutely insane. Plus, I also wrote here, it's not even just the performances and the record and all that, and the fact that he went to he's an Olympic Olympic wrestler as well, which is crazy. But they're both kind of grapplers, and I mean, already Olympics, Nakamura probably has the edge in the grappling, but not only that, he actually, I would say, has a pretty clear edge on the feet as well. So I just don't really see a way for Kazama to win this unless Nakamura makes some kind of insane mistake, which could happen. I mean, this tournament has been all over the place in terms of what's been expected, because the underdogs have been kind of clearing out this entire tournament. It's been kind of insane, actually, what's been happening. So anything could happen, but I gotta say, Nakamura is looking real good going into this one. -450. I will be putting him in I believe I put him in my parlay. I did. I put him in my parlays. I think that's pretty fair. -450. Looking great. excuse me, the over under is at 1.5 rounds. With all the grappling, because Kazama loves to grapple, Nakamura loves to grapple, I could easily see this heading into the second round. It is dead even, by the way, in the odds for the over under being at 1.5. But man, that's a tough one. And I 100% exactly see right there why it would be dead even in the odds, because I'm struggling to even pick one right now. Um, I would say because it is this one sided in terms of the odds and on paper how one sided it is, I would be probably favoring the under. It is also the numbers are just barely favoring that direction. Well, I mean, the money is, I would say, barely favoring that direction. So I think that's the better choice. Minus 125 right now for over 1.5, minus 105 for under 1.5. So they're both minus money. Like I said, because normally when you see these kind of favorites, minus 450, Olympic wrestler, very, very good striker, got a knockout last time. We could definitely be looking at um, the under 1.5. And like I said, it is slightly better in terms of the price as well at minus 105. So that's where I'm going with it. But that's purely based on the odds on this one, because I think 1.5 is very, very close. I think it could easily, I think it actually probably is going to end in the second round. So, you know, you got to, I would favor the under on that one, because you got to also think, how likely would it be that somebody gets a finish in the third round? Not usually as likely. It's not a hugely common thing to happen. So in general, when it's like this, you'd kind of favor the under anyway. Just giving you my reasoning why there. I think that's pretty fair. So Nakamura minus 450, throwing him in the parlays, and then the under 1.5 minus 105. I think it's looking good. That is the bantamweight finale. The featherweight finals. This one is what I'm actually looking forward to the most, because Zhang Yang Li is an absolute machine. He is an animal. I mean, I know those are two directly opposite things, but he fits into both of those categories. I mean, the guy looks like a fucking he looks like a welterweight. Let's be honest. He is massive, massive for featherweight. So already, I mean, just an absolute statue of a man at featherweight. See, I can't even imagine him weighing less than 160, 165 while he's fighting. He is that big. He is so big. And not only that, he has grabbed 2 first round finishes. Not only that, 2 knockouts in the first minute of both of his fights in the road to UFC. And I got to be honest, I don't think it's going to end any other way this time either. I'm predicting another first round finish for Zhang Yang Li. And I said this last time going into the actually, I don't think I did talk about it going into the semifinals, but that was my prediction on Tapology, was another first round KO. And that's where I'm going again this time. First round KO again. Honestly, I think because he's a featherweight, he easily could be competing right now, dead serious, in the top 20 of the UFC right now at featherweight, possibly even top 15. I'm not even joking. That is how good this guy is. So to me, there's no doubt. Minus 260 is what they're putting this at. I think that should be at minus 450. And I get it. Yi Jia is actually is very good himself, and that's probably why it's closer than I would have expected. But minus 260, Zhang Yang Li, I mean, the guy is a tank. The guy is unbelievable. Nobody's been able to even take really any punches at all from this guy. And I mean, he got hit actually a little bit in the last one because he doesn't care. Like, he knows you're not going to be able to do anything to him. So he just walked right through him. and knocked him out. Got hit a couple times, didn't care, didn't flinch, just bam, that was it. Finish. And I think that's pretty much what's going to happen this time too. Maybe Yijia is going to last 2-3 minutes. Who knows? Maybe he's going to last a little bit longer, but yeah, no, this is going to be a finish for Lee. Yeah, this is where I'm putting a decent amount of money on it. Minus 260 especially. Yeah, these odds are looking absolutely fantastic for this guy. That being said, I really do think that Yijia also has a chance at featherweight in the UFC, but Lee is on a whole different level. Yeah, he is probably going to grab another absolutely insane finish in this fight as well. And I can't wait to watch it. No matter what happens in this fight, I cannot wait to watch because this actually really should be the featured prelim in my mind. I really do think that. But yeah, featherweight finals, Jung Young Lee for sure, minus 260. In fact, they didn't even put down an over under on this one, probably because it would be so heavily favored in the under 1.5 range that they thought, we're not even going to bother putting these odds up. I actually think that's probably what happened here. If that's not why, and you see that odd going around, I'm sure it's on other betting sites. Bet99 is a little stingy sometimes like that. Yeah, I would be putting a lot of money on that sub 1.5 betting line there, and definitely a lot on a Lee first round finish for sure, or even just a Lee finish to bring it down from minus 260. You know, if you can get a minus 200 betting line on Jung Young Lee here, take that all day. You know, for real, putting a lot of money on that for sure. That is my pick. Then we've got the lightweights, and this, of course, would be the last one of the night that we're talking about. And I am actually kind of excited for this one, just because I'm like 90% sure there's also going to be a knockout in this one. We've got Jeka Saragi from Indonesia, Anshul Jubli from India. Like I said, who would have thought? Who would have thought the lightweight finale is Indonesia versus India? What a story. I mean, we saw some real good contenders at 155 fall to these two guys. Both of these guys, I thought were going to get absolutely annihilated in the semifinals, and man, did they prove me wrong. Unbelievable for both of these guys to even make it this far. I hope I hope Indonesia and India are going to be watching and going absolutely insane for these two guys. Totally deserve it. And very excited to watch this. And especially with the person who I'm going to be picking, Jeka Saragi, because he is quite a character. I mean, what a guy. I was so happy. Even though I lost my bet last time picking against Saragi, his reaction and his performance in both of the fights, I'm a fan. I really am a fan. This guy's fantastic. Real personality and hits like an absolute truck. I mean, this guy, power for days, like unreal, which is exactly why I will be picking him in this fight, because honestly, he can get hit a bunch of times, does not care. He's one of those guys where he can just get hit all the time. Kind of like I mean, I don't want to compare him too much to somebody like Chandler, because he's obviously not, you know, as insane and entertaining as Chandler, because that's the pinnacle. But he's making his way, that he is that kind of guy though, where he's not scared to get hit. He will go in there, get hit, and then bam, land some clean shots to get a knockout. And that is how I think this is going to go. I do think he is going to get a knockout over Anshul Jubli. That being said, Jubli did look very good in the semifinals. Very good boxer. Man, you know, not great at the grappling, but Saragi is not going to be grappling here either, so I don't really think we're going to have to worry about that. Yeah, so it's gonna be a little harder for Sadegi to land clean, but honestly, he's he's just the kind of guy. Oh, you know what? And I even wrote it down here. I'll actually go through what I said here. Jubilee has a huge edge in boxing technique. There's no question about that. That Jubilee is a better technical boxer, but he walked forward constantly, constantly in his last fight. And if there's anybody that you don't want to do that to, it would be Sadagi because yeah, you cannot walk down Sadagi. He will meet you in the middle and trade with you until he wins. That is who he is. So I think it's going to be a rough strategy for Sadagi for Jubilee. If he does that, if he doesn't adjust, and I think Sadagi would get a first round knockout if that's the case. If he can adapt and if he changes his strategy quite a bit to not do that, he's got a pretty good chance. But I just have a feeling that I mean, it's not a knock on Indian MMA in general, but that, you know, unless you're really training with coaches that know MMA really, really well at this level, I don't know if that's enough because Jubilee is still training in India, getting coached by trainers, I believe, who are from India and, you know, part of that scene. And I don't know if that's necessarily going to be enough for this. Just my opinion. That being said, if he proves me wrong, I will gladly take the L on that one. That being said, I do think Sadagi has a very clear edge in this matchup, only because of who he is as a fighter, let's say, and his power. But it is a pretty close fight. The odds are dead even. Plus 100 for Sadagi, minus 120 for Jubilee. Like I said, it's really, really close. It's really close. Could go either way. These are the lightweights. They're both strikers. Either one of them could get a knockout here. I'm going with the guy who's just a little bit crazier and hungrier and more powerful. I'm going with Sadagi. He's a wild guy. He's a loose cannon. I'm going with the loose cannon on this one. Plus 100. And especially since it's dead even, as I've said time and time again, if it's dead even, just in terms of the betting odds alone, go with the guy that has the better odds if it really is that close. So, got to go with Sadagi again. Everything in terms of the betting going towards Sadagi. So, yeah, and that's it. That's it. And I will quickly go through the parlays, because there are a few. There are a few guys on this card that are looking good. A few fighters, I should say, because one of them is Jeon Kim, who I am favoring. I don't think I'm going to put her on the parlay though, because man, she's been screwed a couple of times. Like, she got these favorable matchups in a couple of her fights recently, and it looked like she was going to win really easily, and then it just botched it. I don't know what happened. Did not look good in a couple of those fights and ended up losing when she really should have won. And this is another case where she really should win. So, I mean, I am favoring her heavily at the minus 275. And you could put her in a couple of parlays, but very unpredictable. Very unpredictable. But who's not? The parlays. Minus 1200 Tatsuro Taira. I think that is wildly out of whack. I don't think he deserves to be a minus 1200 favorite. That being said, I do think he should be a huge favorite and should win this pretty easily. Minus 1200 is kind of insanity. And I don't know if it's really worth putting in any parlays. I might put it down just for the sake of saying, okay, let's add like, I don't know, like $2 to your bet at minus 1200. I mean, what difference is minus 1200 going to make in your parlay? Probably not a whole lot. But I am still clearly picking him to win. Jun Young Park is the Iron Turtle, as I mentioned earlier, because I forgot his name. Because there are actually two parks on this card, which makes it more confusing. So this is Jun Young Park, the Iron Turtle, fighting Tululin. I should make that very clear because one of them is in the parlays and one of them is not. So Jun Young Park is who I am going with for the first leg of the parlay, if you don't include Taira, of course. Minus 209. He's looking very, very good in this matchup. I mean, I think they're kind of just trying to give him an easy win for the Asian market there. So I'm going Park for sure on this one. Minus 209. Great numbers. Great numbers, especially for a parlay. So I think that looks fantastic. I will be including him. Jeon Kim, as I mentioned, against Mandy Bohm. She's at minus 275. It's a good number. I just don't like picking those kind of fights. They tend to be very unpredictable, especially with Jeon Kim getting kind of screwed in a couple of her matchups. I think one of them was even a draw or like a split decision that went the wrong way or something like that. So I'm not sure about putting her in a lot of the parlays, but I am favoring her pretty heavily in this one. I don't know. That's a weird one to me. So we might have to leave that out. Rinya Nakamura, minus 450. Clear parlay opportunity right there. Jung Yong Lee, minus 260. Like I said, the absolute unit of a man, Jung Yong Lee, minus 260. I'm going to be putting him in there too. But I will say, because we haven't really seen anything from him at all other than absolute carnage in less than a minute for both of his wins, you never know what could happen when it goes outside of that minute. So I'm always a little hesitant to include people in parlays like that, even though I do think he's a heavy, heavy favorite here. So I will be putting him in some of the parlays, just not all of them. So, moving on. Moving way past Sadagi, of course. The Kinoshita Fugit matchup is a little bit. It's too up in the air for me, even though I do think Kinoshita has a good chance. Fugit did way too well against Michael Morales for me to pick him in this fight that definitively. So I'm going to probably move away from there. Taibura at minus 140. Fantastic person to put a parlay on. I still am a little surprised that this is actually that tight in the odds. So I actually think this is a fantastic person to put in the parlay. And then we've got Da Un Jung. No. Oh, I didn't even Mike. I just realized I didn't even go into the odds on Derek Lewis. Derek Lewis, a massive underdog in this fight, plus 183. So I mean, even based on that alone, I mean, really, you're not going to, give the KO King some credit, especially against a guy who has been knocked out, who has to get in close to win. Plus 183. Derek Lewis, putting some money on that, of course. And the over under is at 1.5, which makes a whole lot of sense. Yeah, I'd probably be favoring the under on that. Under 1.5, minus 123 for under. But I mean, if you think it's going to go more so like what happened with, I believe it was Ty, where it was the end of the second round. He lost, but it was still the end of the second round. You could go that direction because maybe Spivak does hold him down a little bit. I don't know, early. I doubt it, but maybe. I'm still going the under 1.5 though. I gotta first round KO Lewis. That's where I'm going. Yeah, and that's it. I totally forgot to say the odds earlier for that. I don't know what I guess because I said, oh, this matchup was already made, so we'll just talk about the same pick. I didn't change my pick. I didn't change anything. So yeah, that's it though. So quick recap over the parlay. That would be Taira if you're feeling to add just a little bit of extra value. Again, minus 1200. Jun Young Park. Make sure it's Jun Young Park not Hyun Sung Park. Jun Young Park. I do think that both of the parks are going to win, but I would definitely be picking Jun Young Park for sure first. Minus 209. Then you got Jiyeon Kim. Good choice. That's another iffy one. That's based on what you want to do there. That could get iffy real quick being a women's fight like that with Jiyeon Kim having some questionable decisions in the past. Nakamura minus 450. Good. Jung Young Lee minus 260. Pretty good. I like it. And that's pretty much it. Oh yeah, no, Taibura minus 140. And that's about it. Because I don't like Daun Jung in this matchup enough to go for minus 240 in a parlay. A little bit iffy for the safe kind of like we're getting this parlay kind of thing. But that's it. That is it for me. Nice and short. I like these short ones. I actually kind of like this schedule, really. You know, you get 2 weeks in a row where it's just a nice short recap and then a nice short preview of the next week. I like that. I like that kind of thing. But next week is a very big one. Of course, we're going to be talking about this one, but we're also going to be talking about UFC 284. I believe it's 284. Yeah. In Australia. Fuck the Brazilian crowd. That was garbage. There is no way in hell Australia is not going to be top 3 crowds this year. Hands down, this is going to be an insane card with an insane crowd. Cannot wait to watch this card. I am very excited. I really am. And I mean, look at who's headlining this card. Can Volk be the double champ? Can Islam, of course, defend his belt for the first time? Cannot wait to see that fight. Oh my goodness. Can I not wait to watch that fight? But then, of course, before that, you've got a whole card full of really interesting fights. I gotta say, kind of pissed off that they're doing an interim featherweight title in Australia, where the the current featherweight champion is fighting for a second belt. What are you doing as a promotion? What are you doing, honestly, when you're doing an interim belt for somebody who is fighting to be a double champ? What are you doing, honestly? That is, to me, so disrespectful in Australia. That to me is so disrespectful to Australia and Volkanovski. I cannot believe that they're doing that and that nobody's even said anything about it. Like, I haven't even heard anybody really complain about it. And I cannot get over the fact that that's being made. Complete garbage. I hate the fact that it's for a title. That being said, incredible fight to watch. No arguments there whatsoever about the fight. I love the matchup. I love the fight. But what are you doing making that an interim title? Completely garbage. I will not even acknowledge that that's for any kind of belt. That is nonsense. But other than that, fantastic night. Gonna be an insane crowd. I'm sure hopefully a lot of shoeies, a lot of beer throwing around, just not at the fighters, hopefully this time. And some good vibes. I cannot wait. I am so excited. That's next week. And yeah, that's it for now. Area 51 has got all the other sports covered. I've got all the MMA stuff. All my stuff is down below. Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. That's all down below. Thanks for watching, everybody. I will see you.